Okay, I say let's go ahead and get things kicked off. Thanks everybody for joining. We expect the event time to run anywhere between 20 to 25 minutes with some time for questions at the end. With that being said, we'll move to some rules of the road. At the bottom of the meeting room, you will see different options to communicate with us. One's going to be please use the Q&A area for questions to the speakers. And then there's also a chat button you can see to raise any type of technical issues during the course of the event. The recording and the event deck will be sent out to you post the event. And with that being said, let me go ahead and introduce you to one of the speakers of the day. Vivek is the CEO and founder of Entitle. He has decades of experience working on both sides of the industrial equation. He's passionate about all things install base and simplifying install base workflows to give customer-facing OEM teams an opportunity to do more with less. He is also the founder of Industry Next community, designed to help industrial leaders share and learn from one another. With that, Vivek, over to you.
Colin, thank you very much. And it's my pleasure to join you guys today and talk to you a little bit about what we're going to do today for the next 25 minutes. But more importantly, introduce you to a friend and a colleague who I've known for many years now in the name of Michael Bloomberg. Michael and I first met, I think about 7-8 years ago at one of these industry conferences, speaking of industry conference. And it was very clear to me back then that in this world where there's a handful of us who understand, know about, and are really passionate about aftermarket and services, Michael clearly was one of these guys. We've got to know him over the years. We've worked together over the years, off and on, with different ideas and different initiatives. And, recently we were talking about some specific things going on in our respective worlds in the context of equipment manufacturers and what they look for and so on and so forth. And we really started talking about this notion of services and service contracts and so on and so forth. And I thought there was nobody better than Michael to join us and tell us what he's been seeing and hearing and working with in a wide range of industries and a wide range of manufacturers. And so we decided to kind of hold this webinar together. So without further ado, I want to invite Michael to tell us a little bit about himself. As you can see, his bio is up on the screen. But Michael, there's nothing better than the audience hearing from you directly about your background and who you work with and so on and so forth. Over to you, Michael.
Thanks, Vivek, and thank you for those very kind and thoughtful words that were part of your introduction. I've been working in the aftermarket service industry literally my entire career and then some. I learned this business of being a management consultant and became an expert under the tutelage of my father, the late Donald Blumberg, who started a consulting business in 1969. And very soon after he started, he saw this opportunity in aftermarket service, how to apply strategic thinking around building and growing a profitable, highly efficient, highly productive field service organization. So over the years, I've worked in many different industries. I started in 1985, gives you an idea how long I've been around. And I've worked in telecom, medical devices, IT, industrial automation, building controls, building automation. I would say if you consider any kind of product that has a durable good, that has a printed circuit board or electronic component, chances are I've worked with a client in that field, an OEM, or in some cases, I've worked with independent service organizations, helping them build and grow their service businesses, just as I've done with OEMs. So some of the companies I work with are Siemens, GE, ABB, Schneider, and the list goes on and on.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll be the controller of this deck. I'm going to go ahead and start pushing the slides forward, and Michael is going to take us to some things that I think are relatively important in terms of things one should care about in terms of aftermarket. But before we get that far, I am going to run a small poll, which should take place in a second here. Give me a second. I'm going to run the poll about understanding where you guys are with respect to this. Thank you very much. You guys are seeing the questions out here. Please go ahead and answer them. The hosts, the poll should have started, so please go ahead and start voting. Soham, you can hit the start button, I think. We're going to leave this on the screen for about 30 seconds, and that'll allow you guys to vote. And then we will look at the results at the end of this session. We don't want to give any ideas along the way. So, Michael, I'm going to go to the next page so we can get going. I think the poll is visible and people can vote as they go through this. So I'm going to go ahead and start moving the slides forward. Okay, so over to you again.
Okay, great. So a lot of the work I do is around helping companies put together these growth strategies. It often involves quite a bit of market research and benchmarking. So I'm going to share that with you. But you're probably here because you're facing some challenges about growing your service contract business. You're either thinking about it, you're contemplating it, or you've done something recently. You want to make sure you're on the right path. So there's a number of reasons why you want to prioritize the maximizing revenue from these kinds of offerings. Keep in mind, to me, this is almost like saying thinking of I think of service contracts as a way to codify what your promise is to your customer. So if you're trying to grow any kind of service revenue, you need a contract for it. So there's a couple of reasons why it's important to be kind of a primary focus of your aftermarket business, particularly if you're running it as a profit center. First of all, by developing strategies and tactics that maximize the revenue from these offerings, you're going to increase your revenue and profitability. Just for extended warranties, they typically represent about 10 to 15% of a company's P&L, overall P&L. But then if you add service contracts, it could be even more. We've seen companies that have 40 to 50% of their revenue that's coming from the combination of service contracts, service offerings, and extended warranty programs. It also enhances customer satisfaction. So when you have a service contract, customers are more likely to call you, and assuming you deliver on their requests, they're going to be more satisfied with what you have to offer. They're also going to have the peace of mind and the assurance that you're going to deliver a certain level of service to them that they may not otherwise get. And as a result of getting that level of service, they're going to be more satisfied with their relationship with you, with the product and the service. And to the extent you really deliver it and you perform this well, having a contract in place and having these offerings helps strengthen trust and the reputation of the provider. Another benefit is when you have contracts, you know exactly how much revenue and you're going to have. So it's not uncertainty you have about your future, but you also can anticipate what types of service resources you're going to need and what kind of service cost you might experience. So you can really plan a forecast better when you have those contracts in place because you have that data. So that helps you overcome operational challenges and obstacles. And most importantly, you can start making data-driven decisions based on the data you have about your installed base, about where the equipment is, what kind of service activities and service histories are experiencing, and what kind of additional services they might need because you have that data in hand. Let's move to the next slide. So when I'm brought into client organizations to help them with this issue, I find that there's four mistakes they're making which got them into this challenge in the first place. One of those is poor market visibility, followed by weak offers, lack of options and flexibility, and ineffective go-to-market. That's what GTM stands for, strategy and tactics. So I'm going to unpack each one of these right now. So the mistake number one is we called it poor visibility in the previous slide, but it's really that they're unclear about their market size. They have not determined their TAM, SAM, and SUM. So that's a acronym for total available market, service addressable market, and share of market. So total available market is how big is the market if everyone buys. Service addressable market is what's really in your reach, and SUM is what's your current share of that market. So what's your revenue, right? So can you imagine a company that's maybe manufacturing a product, not knowing how big their market is? Well, that's the case with many service organizations. They don't really have a precise view of how big, how large, and how fast the market is growing. They like say, well, there's a market there. It's like selling cars. Can you imagine a car manufacturer saying, yeah, we know there's a market for cars because people drive cars. Some of those cars are kind of old. They look like they're falling apart, and we believe that there's going to be consumers are going to buy more cars. And that's how some OEMs and service leaders deal with determining how big their market is. They guess it. They don't have a clear view of it. And as a result, there's just no commitment to pursuing that market. And tied to that, they don't understand their TAM, SAM, and SUM. Chances are they don't understand the value of their installed base. And I know that Vivek and I and other members of his organization often joke around that your installed base, your installed base is like a treasure chest. It's a gold mine of opportunities once you know what's there. And I'll give you an example that I had a client that they thought their market was declining, and because their product market was declining. They had an old product that was being phased out, and they just assumed that there's really no service revenue anymore. It's declining as well, and they needed to expand into a new service market. And so we helped them out. We helped them identify other markets to expand into, but we also said to them at the onset of the project is, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Let's just really try to understand how big is your installed base? What's the value? And we learned from our analysis that the service market, the installed base, was the value of that. In other words, the revenue potential was worth about 4 times the product sales market. And I'll get into more detail in the next slide of how that we arrived at that. And then we also, just one more, there's also lack of data. So if they don't know the value of the installed base, chances are they don't really have good data on the installed base, because that's really kind of one of the prerequisites for understanding the value and then calculating the TAM, SAM, and SUM is to have data. What is the installed base? How large is it? Where is it? How old is it? Etc. So let's move on. So how do you obtain clarity? So you need to know what's at stake. And we need to go back. You need, next one, please. Here we are. This is the correct slide. So first thing is you need to know what's at stake, and you need to remember that data is king. So just like in my example about, a car manufacturer would not go to market, they'd not develop a new product, new car, or open up a new factory or a new facility without doing a very thorough due diligence on understanding the size and forecast and segmentation of the market. And in this example I gave you, we've earlier with that company, and I think I said it was 4 times, but we've had others where they were surprised to learn that the revenue from service potential was 10 times more than they were actually getting. And indeed, there are studies that show that over the life cycle of a product, a company can generate service revenues 10 to 20 times that of the product revenue. When you think of all the service offerings and contracts that you can provide on the equipment installed base. Another way to get clarity, remember I pointed out that people don't have good data. Well, one way is to encourage product registration at the point of sale. And 100% registration is possible. And I learned that just from my own personal experience. I bought a bike, a road bike. And when I bought the bike, I said, well, I'm a service guy. I'm in the warranties. I like to buy warranties. I want to make sure there's a warranty on this. He said, yes, absolutely there is. I said, well, how is it on there? You didn't give me a form to fill. You didn't give me a little bingo card to fill out and give me my contact information. Or you didn't give me an OCR code so I could go online. They said, well, when you bought it, we automatically entered and registered the product for you. So that's possible. I gave you a consumer example, but it's also achievable in B2B, maybe not 100% out of the gate, but just putting in that simple process, standard operating procedures, that when someone buys your product, you're going to register it in your warranty system. And then the next one is make it easy for customers to attach service agreements and extended warranties at the point of sale. So making it very simple, not having a lot of paperwork, giving clear options to them, training the salespeople on the what's involved in the agreement, and again making it easy for people to say yes or no to the offer. And companies that are able to do that, we found that they've been able to increase their attach rates by 20% minimum. Let's move on. So the next mistake that OEMs or service providers make is they have vague offers. And part of that is they've not made good use of market intelligence. They just keep coming up with ideas. They sit around the table and from their gut, they think, I call gut level playing. They say, this looks like an interesting offer to make, but they don't really know whether people are going to want it or buy it. And part of this is there's limited details about the offer. So I remember a couple of clients I've worked with where they're struggling on their service revenue growth, and struggling with their service revenue growth. And I asked them, well, what's the offer that you make? They said, well, we provide field service. I said, can you tell more about it? I said, yeah, we provide field service. I said, well, like, do you explain what the process is going to look like? Do you define the level of coverage? Do you tell them how long it will take for a technician to come out? Do you give them any kind of commitments or guarantees? No, we don't. So no wonder nobody buys it. And then the value proposition is unclear. So we'll move on to the next slide. It talks about how I've helped companies overcome those. I'm not sure where there's a question mark. I apologize for that. It should be just a bullet point. But the first one is to conduct voice of the customer and competitive research. So very recently, I was working with an industrial manufacturer, and we went through their offerings, and we found out that some of their offerings nobody's buying, right? And so we were able to determine just from that analysis that some of these offers we got to eliminate, and there's others that they're buying. So we decided to prioritize around those offerings. I've got other examples where we've done voice of the customer research and competitive research to refine the offer, but in general, by just going through your offerings and identifying those offerings that are doing well and prioritizing them and eliminating the low performers, you can optimize your sales, improve your sales by 10%. And the reason why is sometimes, first of all, having only one offer is a problem. If you have one offer, nobody buys it, it's a problem. If you have two offers, that might be a dilemma. If you have three offers, now you're really providing options. But when you get to 4, 5, 6, 7, even 10, you have overwhelm. You have overwhelm and nobody does anything. They don't make a decision because they're overwhelmed. So that's why it's important to periodically conduct voice of the customer research and competitive research, and also just analyze your offering, your success rates to determine how you prioritize your offerings. The second area to create stronger offers is to provide more better contract distinctions. I'm a big fan and student of Tony Robbins, and one of the things I've learned from attending his seminars is that the more distinctions you can make about something, about anything, the more effective you are going to be in influencing and getting people to understand what it is you want from them or what it is you have to offer them. So those are distinctions that I referenced earlier about really describing what's the coverage. Is it 7 by 24? What's the response time if you're offering for example, if you're offering a on-site dispatch contract? Are parts included? And so on and so forth. So the more distinctions you can make, the more likely they're going to see value in it. And indeed, I've helped companies increase attach rates by 22%. That's one company I helped increase attach rates because they made better distinctions about their offerings. And lastly, refining your value proposition. So one example is a client who offered a contract which was really a product as a service. So they're offering a plant modernization service, which involved upgrading the equipment and attaching services to that offering over a subscription basis over a multi-year period. Now, one of the problems they ran into is that nobody was buying it, even though the data said that subscription-based services and product as a service offerings are where it's at. And when I got into the organization and did some snooping around, did my assessment, I learned that they just weren't conveying the value of this offering. They were saying, hey, look, you can't buy they went in trying to sell it as a product, selling the upgrade as a project, and then trying to attach services afterwards. And they'd find that their customers weren't buying, and they said it's because they didn't have the capital. So they said, well, we got an alternative for you. You can lease it from us. We have a program. It's a modernization. It's product as a service, but it's really a lease. Well, the customers didn't like that idea. They were told not to lease anything by their CFOs. So of course it wasn't selling. But then when we said drop the word lease and describe exactly what it is, it's a subscription where you're going to get this value over a period of time. You're going to get some guarantees in terms of uptime, in terms of availability. Well, once they did that, in a matter of days, within 30 days, they generated $1 million in new revenue because one of their people decided to change the value proposition based on the advice I gave them. And I didn't stick with them, but I understand that more and more of their salesmen started to offer it, so they did see significant increase in revenue. The third one is lack of options and flexibility. And I talked about that a little bit before. I'm going to go into more details. So some companies have a one-size-fits-all offering. This is it. You only take it. You only take this one. I mentioned there's some shortcomings of only offering one option. They also don't allow their customers to customize, negotiate, or terminate the agreement. So they're kind of stuck with it. So it's a risk, right? And then also if the offer, maybe there's 6 or 7 different features in the offer, but they only need 2 of them. Well, if they only need 2 of them, they might say, yeah, it's not worth it. There's 7 things on there. I don't need them all. I imagine the price of the contract is reflective of all these features. But giving them the ability to customize to get just what they want, there's also the ability to personalize it. And also that's cumbersome and time consuming for the salesperson to configure, price, and quote the solution. It might take weeks, months to get a quote back. And at that time, the salesperson loses steam and traction in trying to close a sale. Next slide, please. So what are some ways to create more options and flexibility? Well, as we said before, provide choice and also provide a personalized customer experience. So to me, providing choice involves also providing a personalized customer experience because you have to have a little bit of a consultative sell. You got to really understand the customer's needs and requirements to give them the solution they want. And we found a study that showed that 76% from McKinsey that showed 76% of customers expect a personalized experience, but only 71% are, however, 71 are frustrated when they don't receive it. So how do you provide this customization and personalization? Well, you got to enable customers to customize their agreements. You can also, as part of that, offer early termination or modification clauses. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to terminate it or modify, but just they have the peace of mind that they can. It provides the assurances that they're not stuck. And you can also streamline and automate the configure, price, and quotation process by looking at software solutions that provide that capability and implementing those solutions. And what we found, this is from some benchmark data, that attach rates, if you're doing these things consistently, they can be in excess of 65%. And it seems low, but not for industrial OEMs. For a CE, consumer electronics company, maybe a low, but they can get higher. They can get 85%, whereas in the industrial OEMs is a little bit above 65%. Anything above 65%, in my opinion, I think that's a pretty good attach rate. And there's always room for improvement, of course. And also renewal rates. Once they have the service agreement and they're happy with the service, these capabilities, the ability to terminate, modify, customize, it can lead to renewal rates of in excess of 85%. So the last mistake I want to cover is ineffective go-to-market strategy and tactics. So an example of an effective one is the offer is only made at the point of purchase. Now, I said it's important to make the offer easy to understand and easy to buy at the point of sale, point of purchase. But you have to remember that's not the only touch point you have with the customer. There's also oftentimes a lack of sales training and incentives that the salespeople just aren't motivated or trained or feeling confident or competent about selling these services, these agreements. And there's also ineffective communication with the customer. They sell the agreement and that's it. Customer never hears from them again. And that's, so that's a great thing in some ways from the product side. Product never failed. But if the product never failed, customer may be led to believe that they don't need to have a service agreement because the product is so reliable. So let's look at how to solve that problem. So one is to expand the sales touch points in terms of who they can buy the service from and what time frame after they bought the product can they buy, and also more marketing activities, communicating and promoting and influencing to the customer that there's still an opportunity to buy the agreement. Provide formal sales training, of course, and also provide reminders about the value you deliver and the performance you're providing to your customers and show you appreciate them. So, you could give them results of a customer satisfaction study. You can tell them stories about how you saved the customer millions of dollars because they had your service contract and you were able to respond in a timely manner. So somebody who's reading that may have never had a problem. They may never will have a problem where they need the service, but the fact that they see how you're helping other and read about how you're helping other companies just like them kind of reinforces the value of your offering. So the combination of these tactics have been instrumental in helping us grow our clients' share of market by 1/3, by 33% on average. So let's move on. So, Mike, I think the key takeaways, what you should take away from this brief amount of time we spent together is you want to be continuously assessing your company's market size, their needs, and your go-to-market strategy. And starts with organizing your installed base data to know what do you have, how old is it, where is it located, and how it's trending over time. And then you want to unify your installed base data to leverage data analytics and AI to drive sales and marketing efforts. And lastly, you want to do your research and your assessments to gain actual insights so you can implement a personalized customer experience and flexible service offerings. And with that, I'll turn it over to Vivek and Colin.
Thank you very much, Michael. I think there's one more slide for us to go through. I'm going to
yes. Thank you for reminding me about that.
So I think one of the things that we've talked about, Michael and I talked about this as we're preparing for this event, is there's a lot of stuff that is being in the public realm in terms of what you can do with service contracts, how you can think about warranties, how you can think about install base. But what we find time and time again, and this is as much as a subtle and unsubtle ad for what we do at Entitled, is the ability for manufacturing companies to simply and systematically find a way to unify this disparate data set that exists all over their functional systems, to find a way to analyze it in a very simplistic but in a very cost-effective, scalable manner, and allow access to it either through an application that could be a purpose-built application like we've built, Entitled Insights, or through third-party applications like CRMs and other things, is really important. And one of the things we see time and time again, and this is literally why Michael and I started talking about this, is when he was working with one of these manufacturing companies as a client, the starting point was trying to figure out almost the first thing that Michael said, they didn't know where the install base was. They didn't really understand where things were. And that's kind of how this whole discussion got started. So the idea is to kind of create the platform that allows you to spin off and do a lot of different things. And so we just want to make sure that we put that little reminder in here that there's ways to solve the problem that Michael started off with. So with that, I think we're ready for some Q&A. Michael, I have one question to start before Colin starts kicking off the questions. You talked about the 4 mistakes or the 4 things that manufacturers should do better from 1 to 4. Were those by any chance prioritized by things that you see the manufacturers making the most amount of mistakes, or is it a sequential order of things that you think they need to get an order before they get going? What was that sequence one to four? Is this?
Probably more the latter. It's where I see them making mistakes and where they can get the biggest bang for the buck. So if you don't know your installed base, how big it is, and the revenue opportunity, you kind of lack the reason why you're doing it in the first place, and everything
Yep.
stems from there. So then you got to decide, all right, is it big enough? Then precisely what is our offer, and then how do we go to market with it?
Got it. Okay, over to you, Colin. I think there's a couple of questions that you have for Michael.
Yeah, I think there's a couple complementary questions to what you just asked and what Michael responded for is where is the best place to start to understand what I should include and offer in a service contract?
I think you need to, if you're thinking about doing this, I think there's two places. One is you really want to look at what your competitors are offering. Now, they could be laggards themselves. So the next thing is to kind of understand in general what's available. And many people in this call already have probably a good idea what other leading service organizations are offering. So you want to do some industry benchmarking. And then lastly, and really important not to overlook this is you really need to talk to your customers. You can't just assume you know what's best for them. You can't assume because your competitor offers it, they're going to want it as well. You can't assume because some leading company offered this service and grew their business by double digits that it's also right for you. You got to talk to your customers. You got to do your due diligence and your quantitative research.
And then one other follow-up to that is what are ways that they can calculate the total addressable market for aftermarket for their install base?
So we use a model where we do a lot of econometric modeling, where we get product shipment data and then estimate over time what's the installed base. And then we also estimate how does that installed base change over time in terms of what's being replaced. And then I kind of estimate how much, what's the value of that installed base and what services can be offered as to generate that value. And then we size it historically and forecast it forward. And then also, your company and title also helps companies find out what they have today in terms of telling them the market size today. What we're doing is also looking historically and forecasting it in the future based on other data, sales forecasts, econometric data, and so on.
Quick interruption, if you don't mind. I had Soham bring up the poll results, which is fascinating, Michael. At least, if nothing else, this is a self-selecting crowd. 60% of the folks here agreed that increasing contract attach rates is a really good way to drive service revenue, right? Which is great. The second most selected option was driving proactive and predictive service, which is actually quite interesting to us as well, personally, from the entitled perspective. And the third one was maybe this is just losing its appeal any longer, but multi-vendor services, which is a manufacturer providing services for other manufacturers' equipment, was a relatively distant third, and then advisory and consulting simply did not get any people voting for it. So I thought that was fascinating. By the way, just as an aside, some of you are probably familiar with another organization called Service Council. They ran a similar survey. In fact, it might be exactly the same words we use. I wanted to kind of see how this thing performed, and their poll results were literally exactly almost the same order of priority, which is increase attach rates, drive proactive predictive services, then multi-vendor offerings and advisory and consulting. Even for them, did not even rank at all as a choice. So, Michael, I thought this is interesting validation of the point you were trying to make today as well. So, just want to show that to you guys.
Yeah, and the multi-vendor service, that's very interesting to me because I did a lot of work in helping OEMs increase their multi-vendor service business in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. And you're right, it's kind of lost its prioritization. I think part of it is that we're seeing more product as a service offerings and new offerings that we didn't have before. So if a company was experiencing a decline in their installed base, and they didn't want to fire any of their field service engineers, one way to offset that trend was to expand multi-vendor service. So now with new offerings and new technologies that allow us to do more with less, I'd say that's probably one of the drivers of why manufacturers are less concerned about building that part of business and going into focusing on increasing attach rates and developing new service offerings like proactive and predictive service.
Great.
That's
Colin,
about
back to you.
Yeah, I mean, as far as last questions go, the last question that I had and kind of relates to the advisory and consulting, maybe people don't know about people like Michael exist. So how do clients end up finding and working with you, Michael?
Yeah, so one of the ways they end up finding me is from venues like this or going to conferences. They can subscribe to my newsletter and read my blog. But usually what ends up happening is either there's an outcome they have, like they know they want to grow their service business, but they're not sure. And they want an independent and objective assessment about how to grow, or they're getting pressure, not so much that they want to do it, not sure, but they're getting pressure by somebody in their organization to maybe eliminate that service business or that they need to do better. So they're bringing me in, and it always starts with an assessment, understanding what is it they're currently doing, identifying the gaps, and then providing recommendations on how to close those gaps.
Great. That was it for questions, Vivek.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Colin, for emceeing the questions. Appreciate it very much. For those of you on the webinar right now, there's a few things that we wanted to do, right? First and foremost, obviously, we collaborate with Michael and his organization. So we're trying to do a combo offer here, right? 1 month free trial of entitled Insights, the application, whose screenshots you see at the bottom right there, as well as a consulting call, a strategy call with Michael to kind of get going. And really is about making sure that you're driving profitability, right? I don't know what those of you in the equipment business are seeing right now, but we are heard clearly from our customers and prospects that we work with that because of interest rate increases, because of the wobbliness of the economy, certainly in the US and Europe, OE sales, original equipment sales, have come down pretty significantly over the last 2 years. And as companies scramble to kind of find ways to increase operating margin and start driving gross profit to cover a lot of the fixed costs they have in place, getting after the warranties and extended service contracts is also something that's really important. And I think there's some real near-term opportunities, like as Michael showed in some of the examples, near-term opportunities to start driving revenue and profit margin, because most of you know that these service contracts have incredibly high profit margins at the gross profit and operating profit level for manufacturers. So that's an offer we are going to make to you. If there's any questions, please contact me by email, or you can go to Michael's site, call michael.net, and please reach out to either of us, and we're more than happy to help in any way we can. So with that, we're wrapping up the webinar. Sorry, Michael.
Like go into my site, you can schedule a call with me, and we can have a conversation. I might be able to help.
Thank you. With that, we're wrapping up the webinar. Thank you for attending it. As Colin said in the beginning, we will share the presentation and the recording with the participants on this event as well. Thanks again, and have a great day and good evening. Bye-bye.